Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Motorman Dan. Welcome to this video of new player information, things that you need to know if you're new at playing this game, whether you played 2 and 1 or Unchained or whatever. In this one, there's going to be a couple of things that we probably need to cover just to make sure you don't lose, or if you're having problems with anything in particular. Hopefully this video can help out. Topic I want to cover is information. Where can you, a player of Orcs Must Die 3, go to find information? A couple places. Discord. 2 links in the description below. One to Robot Entertainment Discord, and then one to the other Discord for Orcs Must Die 3. It's a bigger Discord over here. If you're looking for groups, you can go into looking for group OMD3. Robot Entertainment has one as well, but more people use the Orcs Must Die one, so feel free to join both. Those are both good places to find information. You go to the announcements page, and you can talk to people there. So, Discord is one of those places. The other place is Reddit. They have their own Reddit page. You can go here for information, of course, and the wiki, which is also in the link below. We got patch notes, options, tips, enemies, public maps, combat, blah blah blah. Now, if you go into some of these, they're not necessarily like the rest of them. So if you go into like this, for example, oh, actually that was fixed. Sweet. Okay, but yeah, so you have this, and you can come in here for information. Some of these are going to be reworked, so don't worry about those yet. But there is still information in here. Just search for it. Hopefully you're able to find it and everything. This is under works. We just had a new update, so this will be under works more. But yeah, those are the places that you can go to find information about it. Of course, you can also go into Robot's homepage as well for information. The second topic we need to talk about is skull refunding. Now, up here on the top right hand side, inside your spellbook, you have the refund all upgrades option. If you go and buy the Ox Satchel, no reason to, and you say, you try it out and you're like, this kind of isn't that great, I don't want to use it anymore, you can't refund the satchel, but you can refund any of the upgrades that you spent, which is going to be most of your skulls anyways. You can refund that. So if you're getting stuck somewhere, you can always refund all of your upgrades to buy something else. What the game gives you can probably hold you off for a while, so you shouldn't need to do anything purchasing wise, but we'll talk about that later in a later step. Step 3, barricade placement and economy. Now, they just reduced barricades from 1300 to 1200, so double barricades might seem like a better option overall. But it depends. It depends on what you're trying to do for layout and how you're trying to barricade enemies. Now, yes, double barricades are cheaper, but there are places where you can use singles where you cannot use doubles to increase the efficiency of a killbox or to make a killbox complete. Let's go ahead and hop into one of those maps here so I could show you some ideas on why you would actually bring the single over the double and maybe the double over the single. Let's just jump into it. Okay, here we are in Dragon Boneyard, and this is a killbox I like to make in Dragon Boneyard for all of the waves to at least crash into, or maybe some of the waves, right? The problem with building this with doubles is not only do you have this space out here that I guess could be used, but you have this barricade back here, and you cannot close it off with that barricade there unless you turn this barricade, but then they just run straight over there up into here. If you have single cades, you can loop them all the way around, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, with single barricades, we can do a layout that looks like this, where the orcs enter in from that side, they run around, they run around, they run around, and out. This gives you a lot more wall space that you can use. The ceiling space is really nice. Upper ceilings over here, walls over here. You can use this entire room versus using a double barricade and kind of forcing yourself only to use one wall. Let's look at another place where it might actually be more beneficial financially for you to use single barricades. And that would be here in this room. So what we can do is we can push all the enemies to the wall using these 4 single cades. If we were to use double cades, we'd have 1, 2, 3, 4 double cades versus 4 singles. You might as well use 4 singles, right? Right. So you can do that and kind of scatter the barricades out to kind of push enemies against it while saving yourself a little bit of coin, because for each 2 square area, you're covering it with 1 barricade, which is saving you a lot of money. So when you have a setup like this, you're going to save a lot more money by using single barricades for this area as well. Places that a single barricade does not help sometimes is a 3, maybe a 5, or even a 6. If there's a place with a 6 or a 4 across, if you were to build like 1, 2, 3, 4, I guess, if you were to do this, double kids would be better, right? Obviously, because they're just cheaper overall. But, use this, right? It is cheaper to use single cades for this purpose as well. It's just another idea. So, and then lastly, we want to talk about some issues people have when they put barricades up when it comes to pathing for enemies. Let's take a look at another map for that. All right, here we are in Coliseum, and let's say that you want to build like this, right? You want to push them up here, and you're like, okay, I can push them in, so maybe I can push this one in, so I can do this here, and then push it out, get 2 spaces between that wall and this cade. Cool. Assuming you have the other side blocked off, of course. Yeah, this doesn't work. There's actually 2 issues. There's 2 issues with this row of barricades. The first one is between this corner and this corner. That is too tight of a space. An ogre, or anything bigger than an ogre, will attack your barricades. Whenever it is that they find out that they cannot path through your kill box, they won't destroy the cade causing the problem. They'll just randomly attack barricades. Or it appears to be random. Another spot that's an issue is here, between this corner and this corner. That's too tight of a spot. I guess there's 3, I said 2. There's actually one more, this corner to this corner. So what you would have to do is push this out, push this out. You'd actually even have to push this out, which means you got to push all the rest of it out. Now this should work, but even still, I personally would be kind of questioning it, because this corner to this corner won't work, because that space is too tight. So then the very heavy enemies will go around over here, and this still may be too tight. Whenever you play through and enemies are attacking your barricades, just take a look at what kind of enemies. If all of the enemies are attacking your barricades and something is wrong with the pathing, maybe there's a checkpoint area we'll talk about in another map that could be blocked. But more likely than not, you're just not letting the big guys through, and the big guys are attacking the barricades. And that's the whole issue. Other than like things that are supposed to attack barricades, like sappers are doing it. But yeah, if regular mobs are attacking, then it's either completely blocked off, or you're blocking off a checkpoint, or doing something with checkpoints, or the ogres can't get through. So then you'd see ogres and bigger, you would see those kinds of mobs attacking the barricade instead of the small guys. If the small guys are still running through it, then you know it's a barricade placement issue. All right, let's hop into an example of where not to place your barricades, at least before the patch. I don't know if they changed this or not, but yeah, there's a couple of things when you talk about with this. If you place your barricades like this, of course you use doubles instead, right? More economically friendly. If you place your doubles like this, at least before the patch, enemies will attack the barricades, because there's some sort of a checkpoint they're trying to get to, and these barricades are in the way. So what you would have to do is actually place them 1 square back, so that way the enemies can see their checkpoint, see that little wisp, runs up here to the checkpoint, and then runs away. He can actually get to it. But if you block the checkpoint right here, no matter what, even if they come in this way or go around, they can't get to that checkpoint, so then they're going to attack your barricades. Now, the pathing doesn't always happen that way, but for some reason, some of the mobs happens that way. So just be wary of that. You know, if you look at your cade setup and you're like, there's no possible way that they should ever be attacking. If that's all the barricades you built, then yeah, they're just going to walk around to the other side, right? They got an open area to walk through. If that's the case, just try moving them back or forward, like a half a square or a full square, and see if they still attack it. Other than that, that's really all there is to know about barricades. Okay, let's talk about some combo information / elements. So we really just want to cover the elements, but the more elements you have affecting the same unit, the more combos you're going to get. I did make a combo video, so feel free to check that out. Search for combos. I think it's also the video that's on my main page. So if you're there, you'll see the combo video be playing automatically. Some of the stuff we found out is no matter what, fire always does 7 damage per second and slows 20%. I don't believe this has been changed since a recent patch, so that should still be the case. Ice freezes enemies, making them take extra damage from physical and ice sources of damage by 30%. Ice is really good. Dart spitters are probably the best ice trap there is. And yeah, it's really good. Meaning it buffs itself, and dart spitters will buff themselves. Stone. It's not a damage type, but when you stone an enemy, they take 30% bonus physical damage. That stacks with ice. That stacks with ice. So when you have a frozen enemy and then you hit them with a stone staff, you're doing even more damage. For physical damage, that is. For ice damage, you only get the ice bonus for the ice damage. Physical has bleed and explosion. So anytime you see something with bleed, it's physical damage over time. Explosion is also physical damage. And we see that here. The bleed amount does not slow or modify movement at all. It does do damage, but it's based upon the trap or the weapon that's doing the bleed as to how much damage it actually does per second. Lightning has a 0.5 second shock for stuns, which it doesn't say that here. I'll update it. It's a 0.5 second shock, and you'll see them go zap whenever that happens. On top of that, they become electrified. When an electrified enemy dies, it does explosion area of effect damage to all enemies around. That is presumably physical damage, as explosion is physical. Arcane, whenever you apply Arcane, it buffs all of the Millows. Thanks for sub, appreciate it. It buffs all of the other elemental traps to include Arcane itself by 15%. Okay. The Dragon is a pretty good way to apply this. Arcane Brimstone is also a really good way to apply this, and the Scepter of Domination or the other Arcane Staff weapon. Those are good ways to apply the Arcane debuff. And lastly, we got Acid. It's a new one, 50% bonus physical damage. So you can stack Acid with Stone for another 30, with Ice for another 30, and do a lot of physical damage. Enemies that are vulnerable to an element take 130% or 1.3 times the damage. Enemies with resistance take 0.5 or 50% damage. Airborne or prone enemies, they take 2 times the damage. Now for the prone, they have to be in a ragdolled stance. If they, as soon as you see the enemy come up from being knocked over and they like line up their movement, and you can see them like shift over to where they're now pathing correctly, like they shift over into the path that they're supposed to be in. You know, just try and use it and you'll see what I'm talking about. As soon as they do that, they stop taking the double damage. Even though they're still on the ground, they don't take the double damage. But until they get to that point, they take double damage. And yes, and enemies that are immune to an element can trigger traps and use up charges, like on the Brimstone, for example, but not take any damage from that Brimstone. Okay, now let's talk about killboxing. Now, killbox ideas, I mean, there's so much you can do with the killbox, right? So we're just going to show you a little bit of something that you can do here, just to show you what it could look like theoretically here. So we're going to use this to kind of demonstrate. I placed that wrong way. Demonstrate an idea for a killbox, right? You would have barricades going like this. So then another reason you'd place singles instead of doubles is if you're trying to build this out, for example. Building doubles means that you've blocked it all out, so you can't do that. Okay, so then let's say you've got lasers, and that's your lightning source of damage. You've got Brimstone, that's your Arcane. You got Slow, you got Acid. Then you just kind of rotate your traps there. So Tar, Arcane, Acid. Then you've got Electricity, and then you've got Ice here, Ice there. What are you missing? You're missing Fire. So what I would do is Floor Scorcher pointing inwards if I could. Floor Scorcher pointing outwards. It's a little bug that you can't place stuff right here, but that's okay. That's the idea of a kill box, right? Wall trap, you can do whatever you want. Grinder with Slow if you want to for extra combo points, or the wall charger, saw blade launcher underneath, wall charger underneath, butterfly, arcane butterfly on top, whatever you want to do. That's up to you. But this is an idea of a kill box. Multiple different kinds of traps, spread out. Tar helps. Multiple kinds of traps. If you just spam the same trap over and over again, you're going to have yourself a hard time. This kill box will take care of itself for the most part. You will have to get involved until you can build it up just a little bit more. But just know that spamming spike floor traps everywhere is not necessarily the answer. It's not going to be the best of kill boxes. You're not going to get combos. Combos give you coin as well as score. You may not care about score, but it does give you a little bit of coin, and every little bit helps. It's a pretty decent setup, you know. It's got all kinds of elements in there. If you have some sort of physical other than you know, then you can use the acid a little bit more effectively. The arcane brim will help with the lasers and other arcane triggers, as well as acid. It actually makes it take bonus damage from acid sources because acid is an element. Okay, that is all to know about kill boxes. Just don't spam the same trap over and over and over again. And get different damage sources in an area, wherever you're building. And good luck with it. Okay, the next thing I want to show you is in the options. You go to options. You're going to go to gameplay. You're going to scroll down, show part-time, click yes. Now you see at the top right, it says part-time 25 minutes. As soon as I click the letter G, it counts down. Now from here until I finish, it's counting down. Even if I have go breaks, during go breaks, a part-time still counts down. So assuming you haven't lost any lives, part-time could be a reason you're not getting 5 skulls and instead you're getting 4 skulls. Turn your part-time counter on and then play within the part-time. Now let's talk about endless. There's a couple of changes that happen on endless. The way that it works, it looks like the text over here font may have changed as well. The way that it works now versus when it worked on Stadia is enemies have increased amount of health over time. It increases. We don't have the game files to show us how much and by what wave and all that stuff. Just know that they increase. Their speed increases. Their damage increases to include Cobalt Sappers, meaning double barricades you might as well bring because when you bring singles, they'll eventually just blow up immediately anyways. And, well, unless it makes sense to bring singles, depending on your kill box. And the most important one is, well, and they multiply. You get more and more enemies every wave, right? But the most important one is crowd control reduction. Crowd control reduction is like freeze, confuse, stone, fear, slow, that sort of thing. Those are crowd control reductions. Slow percentage is still the same, but the lingering effect of slow, if you have the lingering effect upgrade, is reduced. So tar is still really good for you for endless. But yeah, just know that they have crowd control reduction. The one thing to get around that is to use physics traps, because when an enemy is ragdolled, their animation of them falling down and getting back up does not change. So that is going to take longer for them to fall down and get back up than it will for them to be frozen or for them to be stoned or stunned or anything else eventually. So using physics traps like the flip trap with the heavy enemy affected upgrade or having the spike wall are going to be really, really good at making sure that you don't die earlier waves. But of course, it's pretty easy to beat the first 25 waves, and 25 waves is 5 skulls. But after that, when you're going for high score, you typically don't want to bring those traps because they're not the best for high scoring. But in order to make it late in the game and really late waves, you want to bring physics traps in order to do that. On top of that, gravity pillar works better than lasers at a certain point because the damage for lasers just isn't the best. And when you want to take care of sappers, gravity pillars are 8 seconds no matter what. No matter how long in the game you are, they're always going to be the same duration, 5 to 8 seconds, depending on the upgrades. So gravity pillars are a friend of yours. Flip traps, spike walls, those 3 are friends of yours to use whenever you're playing on endless. And lastly, we're talking about your starting skulls. What do you spend your starting coin or your starting skulls on? I had asked the stream what they wanted to see in a beginner video, and somebody had mentioned what you spend your skulls on first. Okay, let's say you start with the blunderbuss. You want to get your level upgrades and you want to get your freeze. These 2 things you absolutely want. But I wouldn't go blunderbuss. I would actually go longbow, and here's why. I would do primary and I would do bleed. Bleed's going to help you with combos, and combos equals coin early game. The more coin you get, the more traps you get. The less you have to actually worry about. But there's another weapon out there that is really, really good. Stone staff. Spec into it first. Or do the dart spitter so that way you can start getting the upgrades. Stone staff. Increase secondary attack range. Reduce mana. These 2 things you want. Okay? If you need to, play the first level over and over again on Apprentice. Try and get Untouchable and Perfect Victory to level it up before you start playing other maps. Okay? Get that level up. Get the increased secondary attack range. Really good. Something else that's really good for beginners is the ceiling laser, because it's consistent damage. Whether you go fire or you get additional laser, it's up to you. Fire's more consistent combos, and there are enemies weak to fire, but there are enemies that are immune to fire. So you can always switch it. And as we said earlier, let's say you're running fire damage up until you start seeing fire fiends. Then you can click refund, get the reduced cost, and they do additional lasers instead. Okay? Stabling lasers is a pretty good idea, especially if you get tar underneath them. Tar you unlock. Let's talk about barricades. I've seen this, and I don't know why people don't do it. Reduce cost. Get your level upgrades for barricades. Whether or not you do the unique doesn't matter. Get the reduced cost. Instead of 1,000, it's like 850, right? For the single cades. You get the reduced cost so you can have more money to do other traps. Like, you're going to use barricades probably most of the time. Most maps, you're going to use barricades. Like side entrance, you don't need them. There might be like 1 or 2 other maps you may not need barricades. You can get away with coastal hallways with no barricades as well. There might be a few others. But you know, barricades make your life easier because they increase the efficiency of your kill box tenfold. They allow you to route the enemies into a certain spot that's better for killing than other spots where they would otherwise go if it wasn't for the barricades. Get the barricades, get the reduced cost. Period. Like I said, doesn't matter if you get unique upgrades, you can get this 2 spaces if you want to try and save coin, but if you depending on the map, you know, fine. But get the reduced cost for your barricades. For tar, it's percentage slow. So the higher the tier of tar, the more percentage slow it is. Base, it's actually pretty good. Now, I haven't seen the new numbers yet, but before patch, it was 40% slow, I think, or 45% slow with no upgrades. So that's still not bad, but get the upgrades for increased slow. And the slow over time is pretty good too. It'll help a lot on your Rift Lord and stuff. Barricades and tar, 2 very key. Lasers, very key. And the stone staff, very key. Those are the 4 things that I would get. For the bow, I would increase primary attack rate fire. So when you stone staff an enemy, you can land more headshots in sequence to kill the enemy faster. Ogres might be a problem. That's the idea behind that. Okay. And the bleed is there for the combos. So get it if you want. Don't get it if you don't want. Other than that, though, there's not a ton I would absolutely recommend. You know, Brimstone's always a good one if you do Tar Brimstone combo. You stagger them, of course. You checkerboard the Tar Brim. Runners will get stuck on the Tar Brim and everything. If you can keep everything under the lasers with your stone staff and with maybe even ice darts, then yeah, that'll be really good. Let's talk about ice darts. They're also a really, really good item. They're very good against armored ogres. They're very good against anything that's really big that's going to get stuck in an area. Dart spitters are killer. They're also really good against Earth Lords, which are a problem for a lot of people. The Dart Spitter, you want the ice damage before you even get the increased damage. You want the ice damage. So set it up, get the increased damage, refund your skulls. Once you get the ice damage, if you don't have enough for both, then just do ice, and that's what you want. You want the freeze effect. The freeze effect allows you to regenerate your mana before you have to use your stone staff again. So you want to put enough freeze around for you not to need to rely on your stone staff all the time. And then, so that way you can land headshots. But it also stacks with stone, as we talked about earlier in the elements, to get more physical damage done. So ice is just really good. And Dart Spitter is a really good way to do that. It's powerful. When you have a bunch of these stacked up, it shreds enemies. Let me tell you, it's really, really good. So Ice Dart Spitter is also pretty boss. Floor Scorcher, in my opinion, is the best way to provide fire. You put it enemies running into it instead of away from it. That way it burns enemies that are... It burns more enemies that are in the area before they end up dying. So better combos, gives you the fire burn. In my opinion, probably the best fire trap. And lastly, don't spend your skulls on war scenario traps. It's a little bit of a bait. Don't buy them, first of all. Don't go out and buy them, except for the war outpost. I don't remember when you get this or if it's unlocked for you or whatever. This one you can use because you can make your kill box around it, as you saw earlier when we talked about barricades. Or when we talked about the kill box, actually. But I wouldn't ever spec into any of the war scenario traps. You don't need them, and it's easier to get combos elsewhere without them, so I would just not do them. I mean, you could run through the entire thing without using them. Always have been able to. They're not necessary, but if you want to use them, go ahead and use them. Just Once you're done with the war scenario, unspec your skulls and then go somewhere else, and don't buy any of these until you've already completed the game. That way you're not wasting the skulls. Because you cannot refund the traps, can refund the upgrades. All right. That's everything I've got for you. Leave any questions you have in the comments. I hope this was informative for everybody and new players as well. I appreciate your faces, and I'll see you in the next video.